In the violent and shadowed world of modern organized crime, few names carry as much fear and mystery as Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, better known as El Mencho. Rising from poverty in rural Mexico to become the head of one of the most powerful criminal organizations on earth, his story is not just about one man. It is about the transformation of Mexico's drug war, the globalization of narcotics trafficking, and the brutal evolution of cartel power in the 21st century. To understand the reality of El Mencho, we must look beyond headlines and examine the environment that created him, the organization he built, and the violence that followed in his wake. El Mencho was born in 1966 in Aguililla, a small municipality in the state of Michoacán, Mexico. Rural and economically struggling, Aguililla offered few opportunities for advancement. Like many young men from impoverished regions, he sought work in the United States. Reports suggest that during the 1980s, he crossed the border and worked in agricultural fields in California. However, his time in the U.S. did not end quietly. He was arrested on drug-related charges and later deported back to Mexico. That deportation would mark a turning point. Instead of stepping away from crime, he would step deeper into it. Upon returning to Mexico, El Mencho entered the world of organized crime during a period when cartels were rapidly consolidating power. In the 1990s and early 2000s, the Mexican drug trade was dominated by powerful groups such as the Sinaloa Cartel and the Gulf Cartel. These organizations were expanding routes into the United States, moving cocaine from South America, and increasingly producing methamphetamine. Violence was rising, but it had not yet reached the apocalyptic levels that would define the later years of Mexico's drug war. El Mencho initially aligned himself with the Mencho Cartel, a smaller but strategic criminal group operating in western Mexico. Through loyalty, discipline, and a reputation for ruthless efficiency, he gained influence within the organization. But the landscape of Mexican organized crime shifted dramatically in 2006, when then-President Felipe Calderón launched a militarized campaign against drug cartels. Soldiers flooded the streets, federal operations targeted cartel leaders, and long-standing criminal alliances began to fracture. The strategy weakened some organizations, but it also fragmented them, creating power vacuums that ambitious figures like El Mencho would exploit. The Mencho Cartel eventually splintered under pressure from government crackdowns and internal betrayals. Out of this chaos emerged a new force, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, commonly known as CJNG. Founded around 2010, CJNG positioned itself as both a vigilante force and a business empire. Early propaganda portrayed the group as defenders of the people against rival cartels. But this narrative masked a far more violent ambition: total territorial dominance. Under El Mencho's leadership, CJNG grew with astonishing speed. Unlike older cartels that relied heavily on traditional trafficking routes, CJNG embraced diversification. The organization expanded aggressively into methamphetamine production, taking advantage of chemical precursor imports from Asia. They invested heavily in fentanyl manufacturing, a synthetic opioid far more potent than heroin and far easier to produce. This shift into synthetic drugs allowed CJNG to reduce dependence on coca growers and poppy farmers, increasing profits while lowering production risks. CJNG's expansion was not subtle. It was loud, theatrical, and brutally public. The group became known for releasing videos displaying heavily armed convoys, armored vehicles, and rows of masked gunmen, pledging loyalty to El Mencho. These displays were strategic psychological warfare. They sent a message not only to rival groups, but to the Mexican state itself. CJNG was organized, militarized, and fearless. In 2015, The cartel shocked the nation by shooting down a Mexican military helicopter during an operation aimed at capturing El Mencho. The attack demonstrated unprecedented firepower. It marked a turning point in how seriously authorities viewed the threat posed by Ching. As Sung spread across Mexico, violence followed. States such as Jalisco, Michoacan, Guanajuato, and Veracruz saw surges in homicides linked to territorial battles. Entire communities found themselves trapped between rival groups. Sung employed tactics ranging from targeted assassinations to mass kidnappings and forced disappearances. Extortion and fuel theft became additional revenue streams. The cartel's presence expanded into dozens of Mexican states and established international connections spanning the United States, Europe, and Asia. The United States government took notice. The Drug Enforcement Administration identified El Mencho as one of the most significant drug trafficking threats to U.S. national security. Multi-million-dollar rewards were offered for information leading to his capture. The U.S. Treasury sanctioned Sing as a major foreign narcotics trafficking organization, freezing assets and targeting financial networks. Yet, despite coordinated efforts between U.S. and Mexican authorities, El Mencho remained elusive. Part of his survival strategy appears to be operational discipline. Unlike flamboyant cartel leaders who sought public fame, El Mencho maintained a low profile. Few verified photographs of him exist. He reportedly avoids electronic communication and frequently relocates between remote mountainous regions. His security circle is tight, and betrayal is met with swift punishment. This culture of fear and loyalty has made infiltration extremely difficult. Ching's financial empire is vast. Beyond drug trafficking, the organization has infiltrated legitimate businesses, laundered money through real estate and agriculture, and allegedly exploited ports to control precursor chemical imports. The globalization of trade has made smuggling more sophisticated. Synthetic drugs produced in clandestine labs in Mexico can be transported north within days, contributing to overdose crises far beyond Mexico's borders. However, El Mencho's empire has not been without setbacks. Several high-ranking Ching figures have been captured or killed. His own family members have faced legal action. His son, known as El Menchito, was arrested and extradited to the United States. These losses demonstrate that even the most powerful cartel leaders are not immune to international pressure. Yet the structure El Mencho built appears resilient, designed to withstand leadership disruptions. The human cost of Ching's rise cannot be overstated. Thousands of families have been displaced. Journalists covering cartel activity face intimidation and assassination. Communities once known for agriculture and tourism have become synonymous with violence. The drug trade's profits enrich a small circle of leaders while leaving ordinary citizens to endure insecurity and fear. Understanding El Mencho also requires examining the socio-economic conditions that sustain cartel recruitment. In regions with limited employment opportunities, criminal organizations offer income, protection, and a sense of belonging. Young men are drawn into a system that glorifies power and material wealth. Cartels exploit grievances against corruption and inequality, presenting themselves as alternative authorities when the state fails to provide stability. International demand for drugs fuels this cycle. The opioid epidemic in the United States created enormous profits for fentanyl producers. As enforcement increases, traffickers adapt, shifting routes and methods. The story of El Mencho is therefore intertwined with global consumption patterns, border policies, and economic disparities. Despite years of pursuit, El Mencho remains free as of the latest confirmed reports. His continued evasion reinforces his mythic status within criminal circles, but myths can obscure reality. The reality is that his power depends on violence, corruption, and the suffering of countless victims. Behind the legend lies a complex network of financial systems, political vulnerabilities, and social fractures. The future of Chong remains uncertain. Leadership succession within cartels often leads to fragmentation and bloodshed. Whether El Mencho is eventually captured or killed, the structural forces that enabled his rise will persist unless deeper reforms address corruption, poverty, and international drug demand. In the end, the reality of Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes is not a glamorous crime saga. It is a story of how modern cartels evolved into transnational corporations of violence. It is a reflection of policy failures and globalized black markets. And it is a reminder that behind every headline about the world's most wanted cartel leader are communities struggling to survive the consequences of his empire. For your YouTube narration, you can deliver this story in a steady investigative tone, less glorification, more analysis. Because the true reality of El Mencho is not just the man himself, but the system that allowed him to become one of the most feared figures in the criminal underworld.